Jamie, if you could just mute your audio. Jamie, could you mute your audio, please?
Yeah, I got it now, Nisa. Sorry about that. I got it.
Thank you. No worries. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is City Councilor at Large Michael Flaherty. Sorry for the slight delay, and I appreciate my colleagues' indulgence as well. We're going to start the hearing. We are here today in the Committee on Government Operations. We're here to discuss docket 1219, docket 1219, petition for a special law regarding an act regarding the disability pension for Matthew Morris. We're here to discuss docket 1220, petition for a special law and act regarding to the disability pension for Richard Santillo. In docket 1221, petition for a special law regarding an act regarding the disability pension for Scott O'Brien. And as mentioned, I am City Councilor at Large Michael Flaherty, Vice Chair of the Committee on Government Operations. It's Thursday, December 9th, and we are here today virtually to discuss these matters that were sponsored by my colleague, City Councilor at Large Anissa Asabi-George, referred to the committee back on December 1st, 2021. The City Council will be conducting this hearing virtually via Zoom and is being recorded and held in accordance with Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021. Chapter 20 modifies certain requirements of the open meeting law and relieves public bodies of certain requirements, including the requirement that the public bodies conduct their meetings in a public space that is open and physically accessible to the public. This enables the City Council to carry out its responsibilities while adhering to the public health accommodations and ensuring public access to its deliberations through adequate alternative means. The public may watch this meeting via live stream at www.boston.gov/city-council-TV or live on Xfinity 8, RCN 82, Verizon 964. It will also be rebroadcast at a later date. For public testimony, written comments can be sent to the committee email at ccc.go@boston.gov and will be made part of the record and available to all councilors. These home rule petitions would increase the accidental disability retirement allowance payable to the officers named individually in each proposal. Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 32, Section 7, governs the accidental disability retirement allowance and currently allows for a yearly amount of pension equal to 72% of the annual rate of the officer's regular compensation. This proposal would increase the retirement allowance to the rate of compensation that the officer would have received had such officer continued service as a Boston police officer. All other provisions of Chapter 32 will apply except for Section 8 and Section 91A. The home rule petition also provides that the surviving spouse as follows: an annuity in the amount of 3/4 of the amount of the pension payable to the officer per month at the time of his death. If the surviving spouse remains unmarried, and if said surviving spouse remarries, the city shall pay, in lieu of the aforementioned annuity, an annuity of $550 per month. The statutory standard for accidental disability retirement is, quote, physically unable to perform the essential duties and responsibilities of the job, and that such inability is likely or deemed permanent before attaining the maximum age for the members group by reason of personal injury or violent act injury sustained by hazards undergone as a result of and while in the performance of the duties. See Mass General Laws, Chapter 32, Section 7. There are also suggested languages to the dockets as filed. The language changes are consistent with previously approved disability pension home rules from February of this year. The language changes to these dockets are as follows. In Section 2, the provisions of Mass General Laws, Chapter 32, Section 91A apply except for the cap on earnings, and all other provisions of Chapter 32 apply. In Section 2, a provision is added in the first sentence in all dockets that provide that any income derived by the officers is not earned performing a sworn law enforcement function or private security function with similar duties. Also in Section 2, language is added that will increase the annual earnings allowance without penalty to $100,000 as opposed to $15,000. In Section 3, the language concerning remarriage of the surviving spouse is removed. Also in Section 3, the language regarding the decrease in the annuity payments to $550 upon marriage is removed. These proposed changes are for all of the dockets that were mentioned today. Joining us today, we have former Boston police officers, Matthew Morris, we have Richard Santolo, and we have Scott O'Brien. So welcome to those individuals. We're also joined by Timothy Smith, the Executive Officer of the Boston Retirement Board. Larry Calderon is the president of the Boston Patrolmen's Association, and Gene Carroll, the president of the Boston Superiors Officers Federation. So welcome to everybody. I appreciate everyone's time and attention. I'm now going to turn this over to my colleague and the lead sponsor for the three dockets, City Councilor at Large, Anissa Asabi-George, for opening remarks and any other comments that she has. Then we'll address briefly my colleagues in arrival of their in order of their arrival, and then we'll get right into Q&A. So good morning, and thank you for your patience. Councilor Asabi-George, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to colleagues for joining today. I want to first just remark that I'm grateful for the service of Scott, Rich, and Matt, who have joined us today. We are discussing their retirement and making them whole in this retirement, and grateful for their service to this city. And recognize the reason we're here today is while in service to this city, they were injured, shot in the line of duty, and want to proceed with today's home rule petition that will then go up to the State House. I'm happy, Mr. Chairman, to refer to some of the packet and the details of some of the injuries sustained by Scott, Matt, and Rich. Happy to do that now, or to wait till after Councilor Flynn makes a brief opening remark.
That'd be great. Thank you, Councilor Asabi-George. We're joined also by my colleague, City Councilor Ed Flynn. Ed, if you have any openings, you have the floor to do so now, and then we'll go back to Anissa.
Yeah, thank you, Councilor Flaherty. Thank you, Councilor Asabi-George, for your important work and leadership on this. Thank you to Tim Smith as well, to the Boston Police Patrolman Association and the superior officers. Thank you for your strong advocacy of the Boston Police, the men and women of the Boston Police Department, and also acknowledging Scott, Rich, and Matt that are here now. I'm looking forward to learning more about this. But what I can say at this time is these 3 officers that were shot, risked their lives, the residents of this city. And, we're grateful. We respect their service. We respect their sacrifice for putting their life on the line for the safety of all of us. So just want to acknowledge these heroic police officers. And, I don't think we're giving them anything in terms of retirement. I think these officers demonstrated through their bravery and commitment and sacrifice to the residents of the city that they're just asking to be treated with respect and dignity. And I think what Councilor Sabi is proposing makes sense, because these are three dedicated professional police officers that work day in, day out, night in, night out for the residents of the city. And, we're proud of them, and we're proud of all of our police officers as well. So those are my comments. Thank you, Councilor Sabi. George, thank you to Council Flaherty and to the Patrolman Association and the superior officers as well.
Thank you, Council Flynn. And just also have to read into the record a letter from our colleague, City Council Frank Baker, District 3. Dear Mr. Chair, I'd like to go on record in support of dockets 1219, 1220, and 1221, a hearing regarding 3 disability pensions for Matthew Morris, Richard Santolo, and Scott O'Brien. Due to a scheduling conflict, I'm unable to attend this hearing. Therefore, I want to put my support on the record. Thank you for your time and attention to this matter. Please do not hesitate to contact me directly if you have any questions or concerns. He will also be reviewing the tape and any additional support and testimony that comes in on this committee. So at this time, the chair will turn it over to Councilor Nisa Sabi George to go into to each candidate.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to Scott, Matt, and Rich again for being here with us. I just want to read into the record and for today's hearing, and perhaps this will hopefully create a briefer hearing before us all today, the reasons and the incidents which have caused today's hearing to happen and this retirement request to go through. I first will read, this is in reference to docket 1221 for Scotty O'Brien. Just want to read a portion of the report that we all have received. On January 16th, 2004, at approximately 6:30 a.m., the member was on duty and was performing a warrant apprehension at 263 West Street in Quincy, Mass. The member entered an attic space while searching for the suspect. As the member entered the attic space, the suspect shot the member several times. The member was hit twice in the right arm, once in the neck and once in the jaw. The member was transported to Boston Medical Center. There are multiple Boston police reports detailing the shooting and the member's injuries that were written as it relates to those events on January 16th, 2004. The member was treated for his wounds. Treatment included immediate emergency surgery relative to the laryngeal. I'm sorry, I should have practiced some of these pronunciations. Obstruction with a tracheostomy and debridement of the cervical lesion. The member had attempted replacement fixation of the mandible. I'm not sure of, but I just wanted to read it to the record. The member had an open reduction of his radius, repair in the bride and the right arm. The member underwent physical therapy. Also want to add to that, in or around 2016, the member sought treatment for the new symptoms he was experiencing, including multiple surgeries for his right upper extremity due to the chronic neuralgia and neuropraxia in the right upper extremity. Also underwent surgery to debride his wound in his arm and debride some nerve damage. The member also underwent surgery which included a lysis of his radial cutaneous nerve due to significant paresthesias. And this is in your document. So if I'm mispronouncing the words, they are there for you. The member reports that the surgical treatments did not improve his condition and that his right arm is worse than it had been prior to the surgeries. And that is in reference to Scott O'Brien, docket 1221. Next, I have in regards to docket 1220 on Richie Santolo, want to read into the record just some remarks from the report. On October 12th, 2016, Mr. Santolo responded to an incident on 136 Gladstone Street in East Boston at approximately 11 p.m. Two roommates were arguing over a thermostat. When Mr. Santolo and his partner, Matt Morris, arrived on scene, they confronted a 33-year-old man wearing a ballistic vest, displaying a tactical shotgun, who began firing at the officers. The shooter was a constable for the city of Boston. Mr. Santolo was involved in a gun battle with the suspect. He sustained gunshot wounds to his left arm, neck, and chest. BPD officers entered the house and removed Mr. Santolo to safety. He was subsequently transferred to Mass General Hospital for treatment, where he remained for approximately 1 week. Doctors removed one bullet from his right shoulder and inserted a metal rod into his shoulder. Mr. Santolo, and again, I'm just taking some segments from this report. Mr. Santolo underwent a significant amount of orthopedic treatment from 2016 through 2018, which included surgeries and an extensive amount of physical therapy at Spalding Rehab. And then as it relates to docket 1219 for Matt Morris, on October 12th, 2016, the member was responding to a radio call for a person with a gun. The member was on duty at BPD area A7, East Boston. The member arrived at 136 Gladstone Street in East Boston. The member became involved in a shootout with the suspect. The member sustained gunshot wound to the left thigh, which penetrated his femoral artery, resulting in significant blood loss. The member was taken to Mass General Hospital, where emergency room physicians noted that he was experiencing shock from blood loss and that his mental status was diminished. The member underwent surgery where the damaged left femoral artery was reconstructed. And then finally, one of the doctors noted that the member's post-operative treatment was complicated by deep vein thrombosis, dehiscence of a wound, cellulitis, and the development of abscess requiring drains. The doctor noted that the member has required 2 additional surgeries for management of these complications. I chose to read some of those excerpts into the record just for some description of what has transpired to these 3 police officers and the physical implications that it has had on them. I have not read into the record any of the certain post-traumatic stress and mental health implications that these incidents have had on the officers. But that is all part of the record and why we are here today asking for this home rule petition to be passed. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Sabi-George, for that introduction and for putting forth these petitions. Before we get into the individual offices and/or their representatives, I just want to Timmy Smith, just for the public certification, if you could just sort of explain why this is the process, why this comes before the council as opposed to sort of going through the state retirement board. That's number 1. 2, do we have any idea of sort of a cost estimate of these petitions? And then thirdly, I was taking a peek at section 2 and just comparing it to previous matters. And I want to make sure that I want to know if the burden is being shifted appropriately. I know special acts are they're to be paid by the city, so the burden I think shifts from the pension board or the pension system to the city. But and obviously just taking a peek at the GASB and the 68 report. So I just want to make sure as we're doing this, we're dotting our I's and crossing our T's. But I would defer to your expertise. So that's sort of just the 3 questions for the public's edification, sort of why these petitions come before the council as opposed to going through state retirement board. 2, we have any idea of the sort of estimated costs of petitions. And 3, in my review of section 2 and comparing it to sort of previous and similar situations, I just want to make sure that we're doing it the proper way. So you have the floor, Tim, if you could just briefly introduce yourself and your affiliation and title for the record, and you go from there.
Thank you very much, Counselor. My name is Timothy Smith. I'm the Executive Officer here at the Boston Retirement System. Just for the record, I'd note in the room is I have the pleasure of having Park Lydon, General Counsel. I'll answer your questions. I'll walk them back, starting with the third question. Special acts fall under what we call Fund 2. The non-contributory retirees, the cost is borne by the city. And as you correctly noted, it falls under it becomes a liability of the city and falls under GASB 68. In fact, according to our actuary, it is reported as a separate line item in the city's financial statements. To my suggestion would be just to strike the word funded and keep the word administered as you have it, because that's accurate. The Boston Retirement Board does administer. We do physically pay these benefits, and these folks, at least according to PERAC, are viewed as retirees. So everything else looks fine. I'd also just note, if we're doing some wordsmith work, we're no longer the state Boston Retirement Board. We're the Boston Retirement System. Second question as to costs. I did reach out to my actuary when I found out about the hearing. She hasn't had a chance to get it back to me. I expect that in the next few weeks. I did have older data, but I think it'd be best to have it updated for you. But I should get that as soon as she's available. I'll get that right back to the council. As to your first question, there's really no hard and fast rule on special acts. I remember when I started here some years ago, I had inquired with the law department, and they thought prudent to treat it like a home rule petition. And I think the desires up at the State House are that they have the city council weigh in first. So because they know that the costs are borne by the city, and they don't want to incur costs on the city if city council and the administration haven't weighed in. So I think you're taking the appropriate steps in this matter. And we're happy to render any guidance or any information that you might need from us.
Very good. Thank you, Timmy. And then just through the chair to the lead sponsor, I'm noticing from the last BPD disability home rules that were approved, we after the hearing and working session, we added the language, quote, firearm related injuries, end quote. I noticed that they were not in these proposed home rules, and just wanted us through the chair to the maker if we should add those terms for consistency purposes. And in addition to, as Timmy Smith mentioned, striking the word fund and also including the new term Boston Retirement System. Are you okay with those changes?
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome, thank you. And then the maker, should we we're going to take the candidates individually by docket in order of the docket numbers and or their representatives. So without further ado, I just want a brief introduction with respect to our first candidate, and we're going to deal with docket number, we're going to deal with 1219, Matthew Morris. So good morning, Matthew. It's good to see you. And you have the floor just to do a brief introduction and state some of the facts of the matter, and then we'll take it from there, and or your representative, whatever you're most comfortable with. I want to respect you and your service to our city. And Matthew, if
Matt
you're ready.
was having some difficulty, and then I thought he was able to get back on because it looks like he's still on, but let's perhaps circle back if maybe Rich could get on, because I don't see Matt even trying to unmute.
Hello?
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
You, Matt.
Yes,
We
we
hear
can
you
hear
loud
you.
and clear, Matt. Good morning and welcome
Great.
to the Boston City Council hearing on government operations. You have the floor. If you could just maybe just tell us a little bit about your situation, and we'll take it from there.
Good morning. First, I'd like to thank Councilor Asabi George for filing this petition on my behalf. And I would like to thank the PPPA for all the assistance that they've had throughout this process. October 12th, 2016. For me, was a regular day, going to work. And at the same time, it was not a regular day. It changed my life forever. I always wanted to be a Boston police officer, and I can't do that anymore because of that injury sustained that day. I have lingering physical problems that I have to have checked on a semi-annual basis. No, I'm sorry, twice a year. I'm sorry. And I've had lingering issues from post-traumatic stress disorder. My sleep is most affected, and that impacts everything else in my life. I cannot get my mind to get to a place of rest where I'll be able to fall asleep and sustain sleep for 8 hours, which most other people can do, which shifts my clock to, I may not fall asleep sometimes till 5 or 6 in the morning. And then I end up sleeping half my day away. I've tried any sort of medication you can imagine in multiple combinations through my doctors, and nothing seems to work. It's been a struggle, and it continues to be a struggle. My mood can be irritable. Through the therapies that I've had, I'm able to try to recognize these and take a step back and try to calm down. And it's something that's on my mind 24 hours a day, because I'm not a police officer anymore, and I know why.
Thank you, Matt. Any questions from my colleagues with respect to Matt Morris? We're going to take candidate Richard Santolo. Richard, if you're available, and or through a representative, if you'd just like to address the Boston City Council in similar fashion that Matthew did, just maybe just tell us a little bit about the events and circumstances surrounding this petition.
Council Flaherty, Officer Larry Calderoni, can you hear me where you are?
I can hear you loud and clear, Larry. You have the floor if you're going to be representing Officer Santolo.
If I could, yes, I'd like to. Good morning, everybody. I apologize for the background noise. I am on my phone at the airport, but I'm in contact with the officers via my texting method here. So forgive me if you hear all this background noise. But what I'd like the opportunity to say thank you to everyone that is on this Zoom and everyone that's listening. These officers exemplify what we expect of Boston police officers and police officers throughout the country. They respond to 911 calls for service when they should and when they're asked. And they're there at a moment's notice to provide the protections and the security that we're expected to give. I've been on the job a little over 27 years. Most of you here know me. I've worked with these officers. I've answered calls with these officers. I've ridden in cars next to them, some more than others. But each one of them is the type of officer that you would want responding to your loved ones in their time of need. And they and their families have suffered beyond belief, mental anguish, physical restrictions and disabilities, if I can say it that way, gentlemen. I apologize, don't mean to offend you. But I've watched through the years of their attempted recoveries and how they're dealing and how their families are dealing with the aftermath of the situation. And I implore everyone on the city council and the mayor to please pass this as quickly as possible. We are in the middle of the current legislative session, and time is of the essence. If I or any member of the BPPA leadership can be of any use moving forward with anything to assist Mr. Smith, morning, Tim, or anyone in the council, please reach out to me directly to do so. I know that all the officers here and their families are very hopeful that this proceeds very quickly. And then we will do our part up at the legislature, working with you to try and make this a reality for these officers and their families. They're well deserving. And I appreciate the time on the floor. Thank you very much. Councilor George, thank you very much for pushing this through last week and working together with us to make this a reality along with obviously Councilor Flaherty and again, everybody that's on this Zoom call. We appreciate all the help. Hang in there, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry, President of the Boston Patrolmen's Association. And I don't know whether Jean Carroll, President of Superior Offices, if she's on at this point, she can also feel free to make an introductory comment.
I do see Chairman Flaherty. I do see she's coming into the room now. She was in the attendee list.
Perfect timing. So thank you for Kerry and team for letting her on. And so Jean, this is City Council Lodge, Michael Flaherty. We're in the middle of our hearing with these three petitions. President Larry Calderon for the Patrolmen's Association just gave an opening statement. You're welcome to do the same on behalf of the Boston Superior Offices before we get into the next candidate. If that's something that you choose to do, let me know.
Good morning, can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear, Jean. Welcome.
Thank you, and thank you to all the council, and thank you to all the officers and Lieutenant O'Brien, and can't thank you enough for pushing this through. Anything we can do on our end, we will. I just want to thank the three officers for their sacrifice and their families and everything they've gone through. Certainly, you know, a credit to the city, a credit to the police department. And I'm just almost speechless with what they had to endure and what they will endure in the future. And I just want to thank them and God bless.
Thank you, Jean, as president of the Boston Superior Officers of Federation. And now we're going to go back to our second candidate, Officer Santolo. If you could just introduce yourself for the record and just tell us a little bit about the circumstances surrounding this petition, and then we'll move forward and move on to Scott O'Brien, Officer Scott O'Brien.
Councilor Flaherty, if I could jump in, Larry Calderoni again. I apologize. I was also speaking on the behalf of Officer Santolo, if that's acceptable for this committee online.
Yeah, sure. Of course, it's just if we could just have some of the circumstances surrounding the petition for the record, that would be great.
I can do that. Excuse me one second as I walk away. Officer Santolo was on duty the same evening as Officer Matt Morris in East Boston. On the mentioned date, he responded to the same call and unfortunately sustained gunshot injuries while assisting Officer Morris and others in that basement apartment. And I do apologize for keeping it brief, but I am sitting in the airport trying to keep my microphone at a minimum here. Hopefully that satisfies the committee. If not, I can provide further testimony to anybody that wishes at a later date, or I could submit a written document on Officer Santolo's behalf as well.
Thank you. And Larry, obviously the injuries sustained debilitating and permanent and have led to, unable to perform the functions of his duties as a police officer. Is that part of your testimony as well?
That absolutely is correct. Thank you for the assistance. Again, I'm sorry, I'm sitting in a public area, but I wanted to make sure that I was here.
Chairman Flaherty, if I could just read into the record some of the sort of the final findings in the report that is in your possession. Just the PARAC panel, I think that this may be helpful. Some of these deliberations here, that the PARAC panel unanimously supported Mr. Santolo's application, each providing a diagnosis of PTSD, severe depression, and anxiety. They found no evidence of symptom magnification. Additionally, the department supports his application despite the serious physical, if we could mute, there we go. and so with certain, despite the serious physical and psychiatric injuries that he incurred,
Medical.
Mr. Santolo had considered returning to work as recently as 2020 because it was the only job he ever had. Mr. Santolo clearly demonstrated in the October 2016 incident was the predominant contributing factor to his claimed psychiatric symptoms in accordance with the principles enunciated above, as well as, and I had read into the record some of the physical injuries because of that shooting that were that are in this packet as well. So I would just sort of to continue, I think, a little bit of what Matthew Morris had said, because it was the same incident, adding those factors in on behalf of Mr. Santolo.
Thank you, Councilor Savage. That was very helpful. And obviously, as the chair, I'm in possession of voluminous documents and medical documentation and support, as folks can see from the applicant here. So that said, I appreciate that. Unless you, Councilor Savage, or any of our colleagues have any questions, I can now move onto Officer Scott O'Brien.
Thank you.
Seeing and hearing no desire to further
Thank you,
question
councilors.
or President Calderon. Good morning, Scott O'Brien. Welcome to the Boston City Council Committee on Government Operations. And as you know, we're here to discuss your petition. You have the floor to introduce yourself for the record and maybe just tell us anything that you think in support of your petition that will be helpful as we're moving forward.
Good morning. My name is Scott O'Brien. At first, I'm going to, thank Councilor Sabi George and the rest of the City Council for considering this petition. I also want to thank the Superior Officers Federation and the Patrolmen's Union for all their support over the years. My name is, like I said, my name is Scott O'Brien. I grew up in East Boston. In 1999, I became a Boston police officer. The one of two jobs, only one of the first was being a Marine, which I was a Marine for 4 years. When I got out, I became a police officer. On January 16th of 2004, I was a member of the SWAT team, and we were tasked to do a warrant service in Quincy. It was a Boston warrant, so we went to Quincy, and after clearing the first couple of floors, we found basically a crawl space in an attic, and being the small guy, I was asked to go up there and clear the attic, which I did. I wasn't forced. Pretty much volunteered to do it. Prior to going up there, we had cameras up there, so there was a air handle to the left that we couldn't see behind. So I went up focusing on that, and when I basically got up, pretty much my middle of my chest, focusing to the left, like 8 feet to my right, like level with my face. I didn't hear. I basically started seeing the gunshots, and I just remember being at the bottom of the ladder. Looking at my hand covered in blood and bone, and my everything's face is on fire. Obviously my arm's destroyed, and it's kind of slow motion at this time. But then things kind of click back in. It's a normal time, and luckily we had an ambulance with us, a Boston ambulance, and I was able, with the assistance of another officer, walk down to the ambulance. And at the time, like I said, my face is burning, my arms hurting, but I can feel like there's the bullet in my neck that's basically still hot, and that was my biggest concern. Actually, luckily the ambulance was there, the Boston paramedics and EMTs, who really are like the best in the world. I went to the hospital. I spent 9 days in the hospital, missing a piece of my jaw. I don't know all the medical terms, but I basically lost a piece of my jaw. I had my jaw wired shut for about 4 months. I got a metal plate in my throat. And then I had a metal rod and, holding my, 9 screws holding my arm together. And this, when this happened to me, I had a goal, like I was going to go back to work in under a year. And I never wanted to leave. So I came back to work like 2 weeks prior, under a year. And everything was fine. I was never 100%, but it was, good enough to continue to work. And I, worked for, up until probably 5 years ago, it started getting more painful, and I didn't go out right away. I started like wrapping it and seeking therapy. We started doing tests, and Turns out that, there was nerve damage, and the bone, they realized only grew back, what it had the rod, it only grew back between 15 and 20%. So after doing all these tests, they decided we'll try some surgeries to first fix the nerve. So I went out injured and started this, rotation of surgery after surgery after surgery over a period of a couple of years, to include like the nerve stuff. We took bone from my hip, put it in my arm, removed the rod. And so now that the rod's gone, it's like a little bit less than 50% of my bones there. So structurally, it's a little weaker. The nerve damage is, we cut the nerve in 2 spots to try to fix it, but it really just made it more numb. So it's kind of worse than when I started this whole thing. But it was all like, I chose to do all these to try to come back to work. And also during the middle of all this, I was here lifting up my son and I blew my back out. And they contributed that to the way I'm always like compensating and using my left arm to do most of the stuff. And so I had to get surgery on my back, which was related to, again, to my arm. So that was during the middle of all this stuff. And and then with all the physical stuff coming on, it kind of brought on a lot of the psychological stuff that I really didn't experience at first. Just once all the pain that's just constantly on your mind, I started having some dreams and a lot of the literally flashbacks of the bullet flashes in my face. They kind of pop up here and there, and sleep's an issue. It's just like constant, like my arm's hurting all the time, or if I hit it off something, it just real quick into my head, like, all right, why's your arm hurting? And then it just relives the incident again, like kind of hundreds of times a day. So again, after all the surgeries, and it was decided it was like the hardest decision in my life. But in September of 2019, I had to put the paperwork in to retire. And again, it was definitely the hardest decision in my life. Something I didn't want to do. I tried everything that I could to come back. It just didn't work out for me. That's pretty much it.
Thank you, Scott. It should be noted you were a lieutenant on the Boston Police Department, and a lot of the men and women in superior offices went to great lengths to note how hard you fought and how many procedures you endured to be able to stay on the job. Testament to your commitment to our city, and obviously to the men and women in the Boston Police Department. And someone had stated that it was almost like they retired you. You didn't want to retire. You continued to sort of fight and to try to find that next procedure to try to keep you on the job. And so it's a testament to you as a person, your character, and more your commitment to our city. So we're blessed to have had your service, also along with Matthew and Richard, all three of whom are lucky to be here today having this discussion. So without belaboring the point, just want to recognize on behalf of the Boston City Council, we want to thank you all for your commitment and service to the city. We're sorry that you're all enduring part of, I guess, what is part of the job in some respects, in those inherent risks and dangers that you take on our behalf as citizens. You guys go out the door, and your families and your neighbors don't know if they're going to see you again, and that's true. And so we're blessed that you're all here today, but we also understand the significance of these injuries and how permanent and debilitating they are, and they'll continue to be for each of you. And so with that, I'm going to conclude my inquiry and encourage the chair to put forth a favorable committee report. If my colleagues, Councilor Wasabi George, has anything to add, you have the floor. If there's anything I'm missing, and if Tim Smith, if there's anything from the retirement board that has not been asked or satisfied, please speak now or forever hold your peace before we conclude. Councilor Wasabi George, any final comments?
I'm just grateful, Mr. Chair, for this hearing today and for allowing us to go through this process. I know we were able to schedule this in a short period of time, obviously noting those 2 or 3, I think, edits, that adding the firearms injury, changing to the Boston retirement system, and then the administered language around the benefits granted. So grateful again and look forward to our council meeting next week with hopeful passage from the rest of our colleagues. Scott, Rich, and Matt, thank you very much again for your service to our city, for your commitment and continued commitment to our city and that of your families.
Thank you.
Councilor Sabi George. And Tim Smith, just final comments from the retirement pension. Is there anything that we did not ask or is needed from your side of the house?
No, sir. Thank you very much. We appreciate the opportunity. We wish our members the best of luck.
Very good. And thank you, Tim, for your time and talents and as well. You do a phenomenal job along with Port, who's up there in the office as well. So thank you very much for participating. And that will conclude this hearing. All the best to Matthew, to Richard, and to Scott. We really do appreciate all of your work on behalf of our city. And as Councilor Sabi George noted, we'll try to get this turned around and get it before the council for our next and last meeting of 2021. So with respect to docket 1219, petition for a special law and act regarding disability pension for Matthew Morris. With respect to docket 1220, petition for a special law and act regarding disability pension for Richard Santolo. And docket 1221, petition for a special law regarding an act regarding the disability pension for Scott O'Brien. The Committee on Government Operations is adjourned. Thank you all and enjoy the rest of the afternoon.
Thank you. Thanks, Michael.
Thank you.